Well, good evening, everyone. It is January 20th, 5:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. That's 17:30 for all you civilians out there. And it would appear Donald Trump has been officially sworn in for president for his second term. This will be the last term, I think, unless things change, that Donald Trump can serve. So let's go ahead and get some speculations out of the way. Um, he immediately is going to start overturning almost everything that has been done in the previous 4 years by his predecessor, Joseph Stalin Biden. And he's already at work. The big thing that he's working on right now is going to be the border. Now, I am politically neutral. I don't care about this system anymore. I really don't. I think it's all broke. I think half of what we see is smoke and mirrors, and we're buying our own tickets to their theater that they're putting on for us. Out of saying all of that, I will say that we do have discrepancies in this country that do need to be addressed. Who's going to properly address them? Will it ever properly get done? Man, I don't know. But we do have issues. The biggest one being the southwestern border with Mexico. Trump has a mass deportation plan that's going to be happening from speculation of the White House is within the next 2 weeks. The Department of Homeland Security, Immigration Enforcement Agency, the ICE agency, is going to soon start using their ERO teams. Those ERO agents, I have known many, many in my day, are the women and men who are going to go out, canvass areas where there are vast numbers of illegals, and they're going to start rounding them up. Now, from there, what do we do with them? Well, typically they come back to some sort of a detention holdover city or a holdover cell or a facility, and they're put on a plane paid for by you, and they're sent back to their last known country of origin. Now, is that going to happen? That's the plan. Will it happen just like that? I have no idea, and neither do you. So, all we can kind of do is hope that the man actually does what he says he's going to do, and we don't get a lot of red tape from government bureaucrats and from politicians in the Democratic and Republican side of the House that want to make a name for themselves. I've worked the border for probably half of my career when I was in the Department of Homeland Security. Um, it's a soft spot for me. And it's a tragedy to know just how dangerous the border is. It's even more of a tragedy to see how much the fellow Americans, our neighbors from Texas to California, are affected by this. And, there seems to be like very, very little lack of concern from the federal government or sometimes from the state government. So while there's muggings and robberies, while there's human sex trafficking, slave trafficking, murders, assassinations, bringing in enormous amounts of narcotics that could kill millions of people, while all these things have progressed over the last 4 years and only gotten worse, it's now up to see if the Donald Trump administration, along with some of his new picks to head Department of Homeland Security, the new border czar, Tom Homan, it's up to them to see if they can actually clean up this mess. And it is a mess. The Border Patrol is a mess. Customs and Border Patrol is a mess. ICE is a freaking mess. And it always starts not from the roots, but from the top. The biggest problem that I had with Trump whenever he first became president was that he said he was going to drain the swamp. Instead, he hired all the swamp creatures to be part of his cabinet. Now, it would appear that he's learned his lesson, but at the same time, he just went to a whole nother swamp and got a whole nother list of creatures, in my honest opinion, which means nothing. All right, that's just my opinion. Vivek Ramaswamy, Elon Musk, all these people, he went after the millionaire class. And I get it. In politics, you got to have the money to back you. You just do. That's the corruption of politics. But he had the backing of the American people and chose, I believe, to go a route that would get him the most amount of views and attention and garner him the most amount of responses. It worked. Now, what will he do with the power that he's been asked to wield that's been given to him? Joe Biden just recently pardoned pretty much everybody in his family. He also pardoned Dr. Fauci, General Milley. Who else did he do? There's a bunch of other people that he's pardoned. Oh, the January 6th Commission. So I got to ask you this question. Why do you need to pardon a general, members of Congress, one of the oldest ranking figures to be a director for a federal government agency, the NIH? Why do you feel the need to pardon your son, yourself, your family members, your brother, and all that, if they did nothing wrong? Or did they do something wrong? And this is a preemptive move from the Democrats to protect those potential loose lips that could sink a ship that's honestly filled full of holes already. But the ships that I'm talking about for the Democrats are literally filled with skeletons. I understand that rats will flee a sinking ship. I do not understand when rats start to use each other to fill the holes of that sinking ship while nibbling new holes. Thus is the American politics. And eventually it's all going to come collapsing down. I mean, it's inevitable. We are facing a shameful point in American history where politics is steered and guided by internet smear campaigns, artificial intelligence, false reporting that, could make Stephen King look like a very creative writer, which, by the way, I used to be a fan of Stephen King way before I ever knew that he was like a horrible leftist. But I don't know. I read one of his books recently, and man, I don't think I could ever read another Stephen King book ever again. That guy is demented and a pervert. Anyways, the narrative that's been wrote for all of this is something I want to discuss. Over the last year, we've seen multiple predictions from many different kinds of people. We've got internet, how do I say this appropriately? YouTube false prophets, there you go, who have said that Donald Trump was going to be killed. He was going to be assassinated, that Kamala Harris was going to be crowned a king of America. There have been people who have said that Donald Trump was going to die. We're going to have a massive amount of attacks today. We've had people say that Donald Trump will never be allowed to be president, that they'll kill him. And it's not for lack of trying. But, when you have a political pundit, I would say kind of like me, who gives out an opinion, and they say, this is my projection of the future based off of my opinions on the way that I read the playing field. This is what I think may happen. Doesn't mean I'm right. I'm not looking into a magic 8 ball, and I'm not declaring myself to be some sort of a prophet. So if I give you honest political speculation, well, that's all it is speculation. But does it not change when you start with, thus says the Lord? Now, my wife and I are going to cover this topic in a great deal of depth, and we're going to be discussing a few people and a few of the things that they said. I feel the need to remain silent on the rest of that until my wife has properly got all of her material together. But it is egregious, some of the things that we're going to discuss. And I will say this: if you're listening to a Christian who's giving you internet prophecy every single day, some of it comes true, some of it doesn't come true. What do you do with those people? How are you supposed to deal with them biblically? We're going to go over that. What does the Bible say to do with people like that? What are some of the fruits that you should be looking for in the way these people react to their own crowd? Like I said, one of the ladies is quite nasty. It's egregious. And from there, if she's lied already, or he's lied already, why are you still listening to him? When you hear a person say, thus saith the Lord, and everything is used to be a self-fulfilling prophecy, I don't think we're speaking about, honestly, a prophet of God anymore, or profiting themselves off of your views. You may not want to listen to those people. But at the same time, if you don't want to listen to us, go ahead and click on to something different. Because here at AmericanVindicta, we're all about stepping on people's toes, talking about some uncomfortable things, and giving you the honest truth, regardless of whether you like it or not. So, in the spirit of that, there has been multiple people who have claimed that Donald Trump's plane's going to get knocked out of the sky by Iranians. Well, that didn't happen. He's the president. Donald Trump is going to be assassinated by a second or third shooter. Well, that didn't happen. He's the president. Donald Trump's going to die a premature death before he is given the power of POTUS again. It didn't happen. So to all of you out there in internet land, in all your speculations and all your promises of all your intel and all your research and the thus saith the Lord, what are you going to say now that you've been proved wrong? Few other things to go about this whole deal with Mexico. There are some that say that they have no power to stop Trump's mass deportation plans because Mexico has been opposing Trump's mass deportation plans. Well, to be honest with you, that's not up for Mexico. And there's been multiple things that Trump has done, talked about, not done yet, but talked about over the last month that have kind of spiked my interest. One, and this is kind of funny, he told Trudeau, you're going to be the governor of the 51st state of America. Well, I mean, that's hilarious. That might be a pie in the sky dream for a lot of you Canadians out there. But let's talk about a few things real quick. I believe it's the Trilateral Commission that wanted to supplant a international highway that would go between Mexico, America, and Canada, and that would thus then combine all three nations together into one North American nation. Anytime we start to have a bureaucrat start to go down the lines of wanting to combine nations, wanting to buy nations, it should pique your interest. Because that, if you are not as well versed as some of us are into these esoteric conspiracy loopholes, that might actually surprise quite a few people. There's a certain document out there. I'll have to dig up the research because I don't want to look like a fool by just saying something out loud. But there's a few documents out there that have been around since the 70s or 80s that talked about turning all 170 or 180 nations of the world into 10 different segments. What was interesting about that is that it would be America and Canada and Greenland as one nation. And then what does Trump come out and say? He wants to make Canada part of America, and then he wants to make Greenland part of America. I'm not saying that's what the man's going to do. I'm saying that's what he said, jokingly or not, that he wanted to do. Could he, unbeknownst to him, be fulfilling some of these New World Order dream deals, or could he be in on it? And could he be fooling the people through false patriotism or through maybe something even more sinister, which would be this aggregate style of approach to patriotism where we have to do it, the nation's under duress, we have to get our nation back online, and by the way, we have to protect ourselves from imminent danger. Thus, we got to start eating all the other little countries to make us one big buffered zone. Maybe that's speculation on my part. We'll come out with some documents, see what you guys think about it. It's definitely something to keep our eyes on. There's more impending dangers. First off, I'm just now starting to get my voice back, so if you hear me interrupt myself and cough, I apologize. We did take the wife to the doctor just a few days ago, and they did declare that she had a coronavirus, don't know what type, and also bronchitis. So she's still recovering. Thank God I'm finally recovered, but my voice still sucks. So with recording another short story that I'm doing right now that I think all you guys are actually really going to love, especially if you like anything sci-fi EMP related, you're probably going to like this next little short story. Doing recordings for me has been very difficult over the last week. I have started this this recording for a camera multiple times just to be able to stop it within 10 minutes because I just couldn't freaking talk anymore. And I swear it has to do with this gosh dang fog that happened. I do have a big document that we will read before we close this off about the fog. Fog, smog, bioweapon, whatever we want to call it. So, Mexico. I think by just reading the field, if Mexico gives us any type of issues by trying to send all these people back, which, by the way, if you don't know the way immigration works, when we catch people at the southern border who are from any other nation besides Mexico, they're literally housed, free medical. We documented them to the best of what we were told was documented, and then they were released into the country. People from Mexico were put right back on a bus the same day and taken right back into Mexico. So it's kind of like a whack-a-mole cat and mouse game with people coming from Mexico. So the reason why Mexico would be upset about this. It's not that we're going to be sending their people back. We're going to be sending back millions of people that you allowed through your border, along with the Democrats who helped sponsor all this, along with George Soros, who helped sponsor all the caravans. And we're going to give them right back to you. So I guess you can have your cake and eat it too, Mexico. That's going to cause a lot of problems. We might see a tariff war. Don't forget, there's also the rumors of potentially using United States military to include special operations to actually go into Mexico and start aggressively neutralizing the cartel. Are you for that or are you against it? Does America need to insert itself into any more war zones than we already are, that we're already preparing to be in? Or do we need to secure the closest threat to our American people and to our safety, which is Mexico? Me personally, I'm divided. My law enforcement and military background tells me, honestly, man, Iran, China, Mexico, ISIS, Hamas, Hezbollah, Al Qaeda, all these people, all these little terrorism agencies out there, because I think they're agencies at this point because we sponsor them so much. They get worked in to Mexico and through that border, along with the amount of sex trafficking, which, I mean, it's never going to get the true coverage that it needs. The slave trafficking, it'll never get the true coverage that it needs until you go down to the border yourself and you see it. Our politicians don't do it. Every now and then they'll take a pleasure cruise down there. Senator Ted Cruz went on the border for about 3 days, walked with Border Patrol Command, saw a bunch of heinous stuff, made some comments about it. Hey, man, that's every day on the border, and we can't stop it. Not that we can't, but Congress does not give us the power, did not give us the ability to enforce the law to stop it. So think about that one. This also happened while Trump was president as well. I don't think the border is going to be, I don't think it's going to be taken under control. Not until we actually take this serious. And I just hope that it doesn't take a mass amount of people dying for us to take it serious. It took something like the conspiratorial rabbit hole that is the Oklahoma City bombing to finally take domestic terrorism and reinforcing buildings in a certain, security-like footprint. It took the death of thousands of people for us to finally do something. It took 9/11, supposedly, for us to finally do something about Islamic terror, about weapons of mass destruction, of which, when you go down the rabbit hole of 9/11 and Oklahoma City bombing, you go down the rabbit hole of JFK and the assassination, you start to see a lot of the fingers that were pointed by the U.S. government and all these other entities out there. It eventually gets pointed back into the mirror and it goes right back to them, where a lot of the origination of a lot of these problems came from our own government. So, could it be that Trump may try to do a good thing and the deep state turn it right back on him? Could it be that he does not have the control? The office of the president does not have the control anymore, the power anymore that they say that they project. And we're just living this dreamland like theory that, our vote has meaning, has power. We've got our man back in the office. I didn't vote for him. Now America will have the ship righted. I'll be honest with you when I say I don't have a good answer for you for any of it. I don't know who to believe. I don't believe half of what I hear. And the things that sound good appear to never happen. So let's always go back to the Bible. Don't put your hope in men, put your hope in God. Don't put all your eggs in one basket with one group of people or one political party, because history shows they've proven they cannot be trusted. Donald Trump never locked up Hillary Clinton. He never secured the border. Crime grew and grew and grew while he was president the first term. We had the actions of COVID. We had the lockdowns. He was the lockdown president. He was the warp speed president. And yet we just kind of glance that to the side and say, well, he learned his lesson, and the second time around, he'll do better. That's a lot of hope that we put in one man. All I can tell you is that yesterday I took a good 20, 30 minutes to pray for Donald Trump. I prayed for Joe Biden. I prayed for Donald Trump to do the right thing. To do the right thing when no one else is looking. To stick to the promises that he made the American people. And honestly, if none of it happens, then all I can say is that the Lord's will be done. And I'm okay with that. At the end of the day, all empires fall. All people turn against themselves. Civil wars start. Economies crashes, one of the many things predicted under Trump's second term as president. For us American people, now that your boy's back in office, don't grow complacent. Don't grow complacent. Don't grow lazy and fat on the couch. Don't think everything's fine. Stay prepared. Stay prayed up. Continue your training. Under Joe Biden, I don't know how else to say this. Things only got gayer. The reprobate mentality of the federal government was truly exposed. And we see, honestly, I guess with Joe Biden, just how demented some people in America truly are. Maybe that's kind of a godsend, that the sins of the people were exposed at such a high level that I think it honestly shocked the psyche of most American people. For the last 4 years, we've seen grown men in their 50s and 60s that, I don't know how you even begin to think like this, that started dressing up as little girls and claiming they were 6 years old. We had men presume to be women, and the feminists cheered it. We had entire federal agencies that embraced a outright despicable lie. Does that not expose this country's government enough to you that we have some serious problems? Not just financially, not just criminally, not just ethically. America, we have a spiritual problem. I would say the heart and soul of America is tainted in a way that we really cannot yet understand. And by heart and soul, I mean the federal government that sits there in Washington, D.C. When January 6th happened, the huge setup that happened against all those people, the people who died in jail, the people who were set up by the FBI, the people who lost careers, lost lives. You never hear anything about the young lady who was an Air Force veteran that was shot in the throat by a Secret Service agent. But yet we hear about all the other accolades and all the other saints from the Democrats, like George Floyd. We see what they embraced. We see what they wanted America to become like. And for the most part, I think American citizens were finally exposed to just how corrupt America truly is. You may not see it in your neighborhood. You may not see it at your work. You may not see it in your church. You may not see it amongst your friends. On a day by day basis, I don't think Joe Biden came and took the guns away from anybody himself, but he sent people to go do it. He sent people like the ATF to start egregiously and aggressively targeting U.S. citizens. Whenever you had Christian pastors who went to pro abortion clinics or just abortion clinics, and they would protest peacefully, applying their First Amendment right to protest, you saw them targeted by the FBI, prosecuted by the Department of Justice, and who came to save them? What happened to all the people during January 6th? All their legal fees, their time in jail. Did anybody fork out any money in the term of millionaires and billionaires to get these people out of that area, away from DC, out of the jails? Did we see a mass call to try and get these people rescued out of the hands of a demented government? We're expecting Donald Trump to pass wide sweeping pardons for January 6ers. But on the other hand, the vice president now, J.D. Vance, a prior Marine, just like me, doesn't agree with that. Vivek Ramaswamy doesn't agree with that. Many politicians don't agree with it. They say if you fought the police, you deserve the time you got. Okay, if that's true, can we please go back to 2020? Can we please reapply all the felonies that happened in Portland where they attacked federal government agencies, federal government agents for a year straight? And yet the Democrats, like the former Vice President Kamala Harris, was too proud to say that they had slush funds ready to get these people out of jail. And I experienced that. Me and many other hundreds of armed federal agents that were there on the behest of Donald Trump experienced just how corrupt this freaking country is. America, we are literally, if you think of the terms of the government, maybe not the people, but of the government, we are 50-50, corrupt and heading to corruption. Me personally, I just cannot see anything else except for a divine intervention by God Almighty that America will change its ways. We may even see, speculation, it get worse under Donald Trump. For 4 years, Donald Trump has said that he's going to target his enemies politically. He has had people who've come up throughout the ranks of the MAGA movement who said they're going to start targeting journalists, judges, lawyers, district attorneys, law enforcement officers, celebrities who tried to interfere with Donald Trump during his time as president. This becomes a very slippery slope. Now we've got Elon Musk, who is in charge of Twitter, which everyone seems to think is like the number one free speech platform in the world, and it's not. Your free speech is sitting right outside your door. Just go and do it. Gather in the groups that you should. Express the freedom of speech that was won by your forefathers many, many years ago. The internet is a captured domain by the government and by your enemies. Yeah, you can share some funny memes here and there. I get that. But if Americans start thinking so small that our freedom of speech is based off of what we can do on our phone, you're losing the point. Thomas Jefferson, like him or not, said something that altered the destiny of America at one point when he said that Americans should embrace dangerous freedoms. Now, there's a lot of different interpretations for that. As a history nerd myself, Thomas Jefferson was what? A slave owner. I think he had up to 400 slaves. People don't like that. But what that man said should resonate with us now. If we don't get back to wanting to embrace this idea, this concept of dangerous freedoms, then we are going to laissez-faire ourselves into a complete police state. And by that, fulfilling what Benjamin Franklin said. If you don't fight more or less for these rights that you've been given, well, you ought to lose them. When you decide to take your securities, your constitutional rights, your freedoms, and you decide to trade that for an armed police state that can do whatever it wants, whenever it wants. I've heard the FBI say to my face, we can literally drum up charges on a cheese sandwich as long as you write the affidavit correctly. If we don't start thinking outside the box here, and by box I mean the fact that we're being boxed in from all sides, from politics, from technology, the poison food, the poison medicine, the poison air, the poison water, heck, poison clothes. If we don't start doing something that resorts back into dangerous freedoms, where a man is not afraid to take himself and his family, step away from modernity and modern society and the way society says you should live, and if we don't go back to embracing true Christian roots, where God reigns supreme in our lives and in this country, and we uphold the law and justice by a righteous means, not by a corrupt political means, which would also have to do with us probably having to take an actual physical stand at some point, we're going to completely lose this country. Maybe that is the destiny of Americans. Maybe through Disneyland and NFL and all your sports and all your video games, the fast food, the lights always being able to come on, maybe we have become so weak with the esprit de corps that was once the tough, rugged American mindset. I don't know, maybe we do deserve to lose it. I hope for the rest of 2025, the rest of the time Trump's in office, that Americans take this time and don't think just because he's the president that we've got breathing room. You've got terrorism all around the world, terrorism in this country, and the deep state and everything else that could want to destroy us, like Satan, that's going to take full advantage of every opportunity, by the way. I hope that Americans take this time to properly connect with Jesus, get back to loving their neighbors as they love themselves, have no other God before them, love your God with all your heart, mind, and soul, and you get back to that dangerous freedom mindset, which means you may eventually need to start looking at different ways of preparation. I think here in America, because you've got the time, because you've got every type of outdoor store available to you, you've got the internet at your hands, you can buy whatever you want, your economy is actually doing pretty good. We look at preparation, this doomsday prepper approach, almost as a hobby. For some people around the world, it's not a hobby, it's their life. Every day in some of these countries I've been to, people count the cost. People are thankful for when there's fuel to put in the generator to turn the lights on at the house. People are thankful for a day of no murder in the streets where their children walk. People are thankful that the artillery barrages, the suicide bombings, the invading countries, the aggressive religious extremists are not trying to kill their neighbors. People are thankful every day that they can have some sort of normalcy. Here in America, we've not experienced that in a very long time. But I will say again, and I will echo what many others have said before, many other philosophers, government experts, military experts, doomsday prophets. You are so close to losing everything. Stay ready for it. It doesn't mean stay paranoid about it. It doesn't mean spend all your money on anything that's shiny and technological that you think can help you survive an extra day. You need to be staying in this. You need to be staying in this Bible. You need to be reconnecting with people that can help you survive if and when this country does finally go back into the Stone Ages. We have multiple nations who've said that they are more than happy to invade America. We have many terrorist organizations who say they're more than happy to destroy the very fabric of our being, which is the electrical grid. Those threats have never been taken off the table. If anything, those threats only grow more persistent every year. Now, many people have said, well, Donald Trump's president. Putin will back off. China will back down. The Islamic terrorists will go running back into their caves with their goats. Don't count on it. Don't count on it. Don't get lackadaisical just because this man's back in office. But at the same time, pray for that man. Pray that God finally reaches him. For one thing, we should be praying for his soul. Two, we should be praying that God guides that man in a way that he's guided other heathen kings in the past to be beneficial to his people. I think maybe like many of you other Christians out there, we understand and we know, based off of scripture and the gospels, that a time of persecution is coming. You don't know when it's going to happen. You don't know what man or woman is going to be the one leading the charge to start the persecution. Don't grow lackadaisical in your prayer lives either. So, reading some of the headlines, a constitutional lawyer explains that Biden's use of blanket pardons is fraud on its face. I wonder, with all the blanket pardons that have happened, was this because there was impending investigations that were going to happen? Or is this premeditated because now that Trump has survived what everyone thought he wouldn't, now he is going to begin, and this was kind of a delaying action? If there's still any type of federal crimes that were being committed by any of these people, it can still be prosecuted, even by a presidential pardon. If they're still committing fraud, if there's still active investigations going on, if they want to pursue this, they will pursue it. Trump proclaims again that he's going to lead America into a golden age. I don't know exactly what the man means by that. It is esoteric in its speech, the golden age. So we'll see. The people that Trump has surrounded himself by, in my personal opinion, are not the greatest. I think it's understandable at this point, the kind of people who get into politics, who remain in politics, they're not always the greatest of people, and they're the ones leading this country. Don't forget this. The war in the Middle East has persisted. It has continued. Trump didn't stop it. He maybe delayed part of it, but it was still happening while he was there. And now with Israel threatening pretty much everyone around them with nuclear war, I wonder what exactly Trump will do. Trump has said multiple times that he supports the right of Israel to protect itself. To an extent, I would say that that right should go to anyone who's trying to protect themselves, trying to protect their people. When Israel is surrounded by radical extremists, but also being a radical extremist at the same time, me personally, I just say I don't think that's a war we need to be involved in. I would rather see those people try and figure it out on their own. But Trump has already promised to open up the floodgates to military and governmental assistance. Um, what will he do about Ukraine and Russia? Will we continue to prolong this war? Will we finally get in it? Will NATO finally get smacked in the face by Trump for trying to start World War III with Russia? Who knows? I don't think anyone can make a proper prediction of any of that right now. Time will tell. Meanwhile, while all that's going on, understand that there are people working behind the scenes from the military industrial complex, the technocratical industrial complex, and so on, who want to see these wars continue. There's a lot of profit in wars. There's a lot of profit in medicine. There's a lot of profit in food and all the other stuff that you probably got sitting around your house that you think you rely on every day. It's all about profit. And the moment peace starts to happen, profit numbers start to go down. So we have seen this, economical ride in the past where peace happens, these multi-billion dollar, trillion dollar companies start to lose money, and then war magically happens and they start to make money again. Um, I think it's going to be the same thing. War is a racket. These people are going to continue to push the box or push the envelope, until eventually I think war does erupt and we will get boots on the ground. I can absolutely foresee, not saying I'm making a prophecy here, but I can absolutely imagine somebody's going to start some sort of a false flag somewhere to get us involved with Russia, with China, maybe even to get us to freaking invade Mexico. All I can say is that for many of the men that I've talked to that are still in the government, that are still in the military, what the Pentagon says is on the horizon is war with China. And I hear that more and more every week. Um, we're not ready for war with China. China's not ready for war with us. So why are we trying to do it to each other? Somebody is guiding this. Don't forget, at the end of the day, no matter what man's schemes are going on, God is in control. Jesus said that Satan is the God of this world. He is leading and guiding and steering and manipulating those whose hearts are not right with God to commit more atrocities, put more death out onto the field. And honestly, it's going to be that way until Christ returns. I think as a Christian, that's the way you should look at the whole world. That all these things have been told to us by Jesus, our Lord, that it's going to happen, that perilous times are coming. It's going to be persistent with the amount of worldly aggravation. Eventually, the world is going to ream and rock like a drunkard. We're going to see a lot of violence. We're going to see probably plague. We're probably going to see famine. We're going to see war, people's homes turning against each other. And people thought those times are behind us. What Jesus is trying to tell you in Matthew 24 is those times are ahead of you. You're going into that. We will be going into perilous times. We will be going into tribulation, a time of testing will be coming to this country. regardless of who is in charge. First thing to do to be prepared for that is to get your soul and your heart right with Jesus. Stop playing games with God. That's the first thing. Everything else is to try and prepare for World War III, I'm guessing. And don't forget what Einstein said. I don't know what weapons will be involved with World War III, but World War IV will be fought with sticks and stones. Recently, we went over, me and Dave Hodges on the Common Sense Show, we talked about mirrored life, mirrored organisms. That's a terrifying thing to research. My wife and I were researching it, and holy crap, can that go wrong really, really quickly? But that appears to be in our future. I think with all these different executive orders that Trump said he's going to be signing, I believe he said he's going to sign up to 200 of them. We might see some sort of tax relief. We may see something that helps to boost the economy, grow the numbers of people who have lost their jobs, maybe try to gain some sort of sanity back in America. I am very happy to see that the Republicans have finally done something that seemed honest, maybe, and they're banning trans athletes. And I think anyone who's not of the sex they claim to be to go into girls' bathrooms. That's a good step forward. But at the same time, it takes one federal judge to prevent all of that, to throw the monkey wrench into the whole problem, and thus just, I don't know, continue this despicable nature of people. I think what I'm trying to say here is don't expect much to change. We're going to see a little bit of relief here and there. This is politics. This is about power and control. Right now, Donald Trump is back in power. Right now, he is trying to gain control of whatever factions he thought was against him. And there are. Don't think that there's not. There were people trying to kill this man. You do have Davos, however you pronounce it, who is band together right now, and they're talking about Donald Trump and what he may or may not do. So we always have this kingdom versus kingdom thing happening, right? Jesus talks about that. Right now, we have the kingdom of Donald Trump again, okay? So be prepared for the rest of the world to start pushing back against Donald Trump. We'll see just how much power he thinks he still has, or how much power the office of the president actually does have. I am done talking about politics for now. I will, however, like to read you something that I wrote up. I think it's on Dave Hodges' channel right now, but it is about Operation Sea Spray. Now, if you will, please bear with me. It's only about 4 or 5 pages long. But what we're going to talk about is Operation Sea Spray and other government-funded medical experiments that are probably still going on. And when I was doing this research, I know a lot of this already, but refreshing myself on some of the things that have been done by our government to the American people is part of the reason why I don't believe in this system anymore. This whole political power thing. I think you have a federal government that is completely out of control. You have a Department of Defense that is completely out of control. You have intelligence agencies, pharmaceutical companies, the petroleum-based companies that are so out of control. that I don't think one single man can do anything about it. Once we're done with this, I'll open it up to take questions. My wife's obviously in the chat room right now. By the way, big hello and thank you to everybody that's out there that listens to us, that's prayed for our recovery. We pray for your recovery. I know a lot of you guys have sent us the same email saying, man, I am sick with the same stuff you're sick with. Yeah, there's all types of tinctures and remedies that are out there. Sometimes the only thing that really helps is just time, taking time off and trying to rest and relax as much as possible. Quickly, there are some over-the-counter drugs that are supposedly fixing to be pulled. Come to find out, most of these drugs that you can buy at the store are sitting or were sitting in our medicine cabinet until we threw it all away. One of them was Mucinex. I've been using Mucinex ever since I got sick. Every single day, multiple times a day. Man, that stuff is nasty. It is horrible. Another one is Tylenol, Benadryl, Advil, Robitussin, Alka-Seltzers, things that can contain red 40, yellow 3 or yellow 6 dye, phenylephrine. You cannot say that word 5 times fast. Phenylephrine ingredients are also to be banned soon. RFK has been talking about how now that he is, back in this side of the government, he's going to start targeting a lot of pharmaceutical companies and a lot of medicinal companies, food companies that are putting literal poison and cancer-causing agents into the things that you intake. That's a win. I'm not the biggest RFK fan in the world. I don't have to be. But if that man does go through with what he said he was going to do, if he does help take off a lot of this garbage that is horrible for us to intake, which, by the way, is banned in most parts of the world, then that's a win for us. So remember this. All those things that we consider to be medicine for fighting the flu, COVID, the normal code, and all this other stuff, if that gets stripped from the pharmacies, what will you take? It may be time to kind of apply a little bit of what I've been talking about for a couple years now to get back into that 1800s mindset and start going back to tinctures. Start going back to homemade remedies that did work, that people use for 100 or 200 years or more to treat some of these illnesses. All it takes is that one super bug to hit a populace, and we don't know exactly how to remedy it except for mass vaccination. Probably 3/4 of everything I just said have been things that have gotten us banned from YouTube multiple times. So after you see this and we close this out, if AmericanVindicta goes bye-bye for 2 weeks, it's because we got our 10th strike. We've had 9 strikes against us. I have no idea why we're still up. Some people say it's because Doug's part of the Illuminati, or it's because I'm part of the New World Order. I'm a Luciferian. I'm a Satanist. Some of that's because I don't believe in the flat earth. Yes, that's true. But regardless, you better start thinking about the different ways of taking care of yourself that is outside this government. Outside of a massive EMP attack, which the government, when I was still in, said was like the number 3 worst thing that could happen to us and most probable thing that could happen to us. Somewhere up in that top 5 is biological attacks, right? Operation Sea Spray. and these other government-funded medical experiments, they were supposed to be a way to help the federal government and the Department of Defense be more prepared for when a biological attack happened. So how would you go about doing that? Well, by using biological weapons on American people, of course. In the year 1950, United States Department of the Navy conducted a horrific experiment upon United States citizens. The U.S. Navy did this without the approval or knowledge of the very people who were to be exposed to this experiment. Even worse, it seems, they performed this experiment without any concern for the well-being of the men, women, and children who were, to their unwitting, test subjects. The Navy released a biological agent off the shore of San Francisco, California, from September 20th through September 27th in the year 1950. Yes, you heard that correctly. The biological agents that were released comprised of two forms of bacteria, Serratia maricinans and Bacillus globigi. It took me so many tries to learn how to say those two things correctly. A strong Texas Southern drawl does not speak Latin that great, so forgive me if I did not pronounce it correctly. A naval ship was selected for the distribution of these organisms. The Navy had created a bacteria-laden smog that coated the shore and city of San Francisco. It is also known that the thick smog traveled out of the initial dispersal area and reached well outside the city limits of San Francisco, affecting both humans and wildlife. The exact name or serial number of that vessel used was not found in the Department of the Navy files during a further investigation that was done by a subcommittee of the Senate. The release of the biologically weaponized smog was to simulate the effects of a biological attack like that of a weaponized anthrax attack upon a major metropolitan city. Perhaps the scientists conducting this research specifically chose the San Francisco island due to its geologically isolated nature, though this concept would further be proved to be futile in all of its efforts. In 1977, the U.S. Department of Defense records would later provide some staggering reports that were given during a series of hearings by a U.S. Senate subcommittee on health and scientific research. The U.S. Department of the Army had disclosed extensive existence of various different kinds of tests that were performed on the general public in the United States of America, albeit without telling anybody. The Department of the Army informed the Senate Subcommittee on Health and Scientific Research that based on results from the various pieces of scientific monitoring equipment that were located at 43 observational stations around the city of San Francisco, that nearly the entire population of some 800,000 plus people had inhaled nearly 5,000 particulates that were contained with the experimental bacteria-rich fog. It confirmed that this dispersal method was well within the acceptable ranges of infectivity of the deadly anthrax pathogen. It was also noted by the Department of the Army that the bacterium was later combined with a volatile white crystalline solid that is called phenol. Phenol is an aromatic organic compound that is mildly acidic and requires careful handlings because it can cause chemical burns. Phenol can be found in various commercial products such as polycarbonates, epoxies, explosives, bakelite, nylon, detergents, herbicides, and numerous pharmaceutical drugs. The combination of the two bacteria and phenol and an anthrax anthrax simulant were then sprayed by the United States and also the United Kingdom military scientists across an area of Dorset, an area that consisted of most of southwestern England as part of the DICE trials. The aptly named DICE trials stands for Dorset Biological Warfare Experiments, which began in 1953 and ended in 1975. So, for 22 years, the US military and the United Kingdom military scientists sprayed active biological agents on the unwitting people of southwestern England. The research concluded that the two various dispersal methods could produce a contaminant that could target an area of over 100 miles away and eventually spread to an uncontainable 10,000 square miles of infectivity based upon the subjected jet stream. This method of biological warfare attack and the test program that was designed to study its effects is called large area of coverage concept. So, in essence, if I've got a plane right here and I've got southwestern England right here, I'm 100 miles away. I begin spraying as I'm flying. The winds will carry that 100 miles worth of fog, smog, whatever the dispersal agent is, and it will eventually grow from 100 miles to 10,000 square miles. That was almost 100% guaranteed infection rate. Imagine, if you will, a group of terrorists have commandeered or even just rented a private plane, and they manufactured a similar smog dispersal machine onto the bottom outer hull of that plane or to a wing of the plane that is filled with a sufficient amount of biological material that matched these DICE experiments that you can go online and you can read about. They could travel 100 miles off the shore of Santa Rosa, where they began to disperse their deadly contagious cargo and could continuously spray down to Santa Cruz. That's just roughly short of, I think, 113 miles. San Francisco would be in the middle of these two locations. They would release this biologically weaponized smog and let the air currents push that smog across some of the most densely populated areas of Northern California, and it would have infected potentially tens of millions of people by using this dispersal pattern. How could someone have done this in practical terms? Well, let's take some of these educated measurements real quick. From the city of Santa Cruz to the city of Santa Rosa, like I said, it's roughly 113 miles. San Francisco lies between both of these cities, somewhere near a halfway mark. Then we calculate 10,000 square miles pushing eastward of these intercoastal cities, using San Francisco as that centermost point of the spread of the biological air dispersal agents. This would then envelop the California counties. And if you're in any one of these counties, give me a thumbs up whenever I call the name of your county. This smog would envelop the counties of Sonoma, Napa, Solano, Contra Costa, Marin, San Francisco, Alameda, Santa Cruz, Santa Clara, San Joaquin, Sacramento, and Sutter counties, having a combined total square miles of approximately 10,600 square miles. Within that 10,600 square miles is an estimated population of 9,732,971 residents that would become infected. A typical commercial flight can travel 100 miles in roughly 10 to 12 minutes, assuming a cruising speed of around 500 miles an hour. This is all depending on wind, the headwind and tailwind conditions that can either speed up or slow down the flight path. Altitude also plays a significant role in this question. The higher the altitude, the faster the speeds of the plane due to less air resistance. However, you've got to have a suboptimal dispersal of those biological agents. So it may require a certain altitude height. So you may have to hit a certain ceiling in the altitude, or you could damage the biological agents. I mean, they're exposed to extreme weather, they're exposed to extreme amounts of sunlight, so they may not be so high in the sky that you can't see them. California is approximately 163,696 square miles, which includes both land and water. California's water areas cover roughly 7,737 square miles. San Francisco is only 46.87 square miles with a population of roughly 800,000 residents, while just 6 hours south of the infamous island city lays the metropolitan megacity of Los Angeles, the City of Angels. Los Angeles metro area is estimated to be 502.7 square miles with a population of approximately 4 million residents. Depending on the weather patterns after the dispersal, it could take this airborne weapon a mere hour or two to travel up to 300 miles to hit the LA metro area. This would prove absolutely devastating if the aforementioned plane of terrorists decided to fly from Fresno, California, down to Bakersfield, California, which is only 101 miles. And it lies somewhere close to the middle of California's most densely populated areas. But according to the interactive website windfinder.com, the Death Valley winds would push the air dispersed biologically weaponized smog that's traveling eastward back into itself and then push it south from Fresno to Los Angeles, which then would be caught by a strong eastern wind. And if you go to windfinder.com, you can see the path of the winds. It could potentially go from Los Angeles and pushed eastward through the Mojave National Desert, arriving in Nevada or Arizona within just hours after dispersal. I'll take a time to say a few things. Biological weapons, depending on which is used, is some of the most dangerous things mankind has ever created. And the fact that the US and the UK military scientists discovered practical, very fiscally capable ways of dispersing this, it's unthinkable to me. But they proved it could happen. Now, that was in 75 when the trials of this eventually ended. And there were a lot of illnesses that were actually developed because of this upon the people of San Francisco and after that. The illness that were developed by the San Francisco populace were cases of pneumonia in San Francisco, also increased after the dispersal of these bacteria, sore throat, high fevers, pneumonia. Sound familiar? Though the U.S. government officials argued during the subcommittee investigation that there were no causal relations that could prove the dispersal agents led to the outbreaks of pneumonia, on October 11th, 1950, 11 residents were checked into the Stanford Hospital near San Francisco with what is recorded as, quote, very rare and serious urinary tract infections by the doctors. The urinary tract infection was so rare that the Stanford doctors wrote about the outbreak in a medical journal. In all, 11 people, as far as we can determine, were recorded to be sick by hospital records, with one being a fatality that eventually led to having a heart condition that inevitably killed the man. No evidence was given to the Senate subcommittee that the military had alert any health authorities before they proceeded to blanket the region with bacteria. Doctors would later ponder if whether or not these experiments on the populace were what caused heart valve infections around the same time as this incident, as well as other serious infections that were documented with intravenous drug users in the 1960s and 1970s. Between 1949 and 1963, the U.S. government has conducted 239 open air tests of biological agents in America. In 80 of those experiments, live bacteria was used. In others, inert chemicals were used to simulate bacteria. By the way, most of those inert chemicals that were used have been found to have cancer-causing agents in them. In 1950, Panama City and Key West, Florida, had a similar experiment done to them, like San Francisco, with no reports of outbreaks after the project was completed. Army researchers dispersed zinc cadmium sulfide, which is a known cancer-causing agent, over Minnesota and other Midwestern states to determine how far the cancer-causing agent would disperse across the atmosphere. The particles were detected more than 1,000 miles away in New York State, affecting both humans and animals, wildlife. The same bacteria, Bacillus globigii, that spread over San Francisco was also sprayed over New York, Washington, D.C., and also along the Pennsylvania Turnpike. In 1966, U.S. military scientists spread the bacteria Bacillus subtilis, a variant of Niger, in the New York City subway stations in downtown Manhattan. In downtown Manhattan, through all the subways, they dispersed a biological warfare agent. They filled light bulbs with this pathogen that was also considered to be harmless and dropped them onto subway tracks in various subway locations. The bacteria was able to travel multiple miles down the underground subway system. Army officials concluded in January 1968 in a report that, quote, similar covert attacks with a pathogenic disease-causing agent during peak traffic hours could be expected to expose large numbers of people to infection and subsequent illness or death. To add in a thought here, when I was in the federal government, there was a particular training that we had to do that involved a underground subway scenario and a dispersal of biological contaminants. It was all done in a Hollywood theater style approach, special effects. It was honestly, it was amazing to be able to walk down there and experience it. And they would actually release like a fog machine to generate the biological attack. This is part of what they're talking about. In May of 1965, U.S. military scientists secretly released the bacteria Bacillus globigii again at Washington's National Airport and the Greyhound Line's bus terminal in the form of a mock biological warfare attack. They didn't tell anybody that they were doing it. More than 130 passengers who were exposed to the bacteria traveled for 2 weeks, crossing 7 state lines and stopping to visit 39 U.S. cities, while exposing every single city and every single traffic stop or truck stop to this biological agent. There are a multitude of experiments that have occurred in the United States. where the targets were the U.S. citizens and military members themselves. From the infamous Tuskegee syphilis experiment to the horrific MK Ultra experiments, some of the most common unconsented patients of these nefarious scientific experiments were prisoners, military members, mental health patients, and poor people. In 1942, the federal government funded an experimental flu vaccine on Michigan insane asylum patients. After giving the experimental vaccine, they were exposed to various flu strains. Dr. Jonas Salk, the lead researcher for this experiment, would later go on to create the polio vaccine. The insane asylum patients were not able to communicate their reactions to the vaccine and were otherwise ignored by the doctors who were in charge of their well being. They couldn't, because of their incapacitation, they couldn't tell them how much they were hurting. They couldn't tell them the side effects, and no one was there to listen or document it. In the 1940s, Dr. W. Paul Havens Jr. was authorized federal funds for his research into hepatitis. He would expose mental patients in Middletown and Norwich, Connecticut, to potentially fatal viruses that would attack the liver. He would be one of the first scientists to differentiate types of hepatitis and their causes by experimenting on people, on mental patients, without their consent, who couldn't say no. He was considered an expert on viral diseases by the World Health Organization. Another account in 1946 to 47 was that of prisoners in the West Coxsackie Reformatory Prison who had to swallow a deadly stomach virus that was in the form of unfiltered stool suspension. Don't even research what that is if you have a weak stomach. This disease was more closely related to the human norovirus. Again in the 1940s, a pandemic-causing flu virus was injected up the noses of prisoners in Maryland, supposedly with their consent. Another account was in 1963, where U.S. government doctors injected cancer-causing cells into 19 chronically ill elderly people at the Jewish Chronic Disease Hospital in Brooklyn, New York, to see if their bodies would reject the cancer cells, all without their consent. They didn't tell them. They didn't warn them. They just did it, and then they monitored them. This hospital's doctors did this, like I said, without their patients' consent, and even went so far to say that there was no need to inform the patients because they had deemed the cancer-causing cells as harmless. Accounts of U.S. government doctors also purposely infecting prisoners and mental patients in Guatemala with syphilis to see if penicillin could prevent or cure some of these sexually transmitted diseases happened. The tests were hidden for decades and found no real benefit in the experiment. They just did it. Well, I guess there's not enough to research here. And they didn't tell anybody, to include the Guatemalan government. The U.S. government was forced to apologize to the government of Guatemala for their nefarious actions in those incidents. A University of Minnesota study in the late 1940s injected 11 public service employee volunteers with malaria, and it gets worse, then purposely starved them for 5 days and subjected them to hard labor outside, just to see what it would do. In the 1950s, federal penitentiary inmates in Atlanta, Georgia, volunteered to be infected with the bacteria gonorrhea. At nearby Staten Island from 1963 to 1966, A controversial medical study was conducted at the Willowbrook State School for Children with Mental Retardation. The children were intentionally given hepatitis orally and by injection to see if they could then be cured with gamma globulin. Holmesburg Prison in Philadelphia made extensive use of inmates for medical research. Some of the victims are still around to talk about it. Edward Yusuf Anthony, featured in a book about the study, says that he agreed to have a layer of skin peeled off of his back, which was coated with searing chemicals to test a drug. He did that for money to buy cigarettes at the local commissary in the prison. The idea that prison inmates and mental health patients would ever volunteer for such experiments is laughable. In the 1920s, Dr. L.L. Stanley, the resident doctor for San Quentin Prison in California, mutilated elderly inmates by implanting them, this is a true story, with animal livestock testicles or sexual organs that were recently taken off of executed inmates. A 1919 Washington Post article mentioned these bizarre experiments by saying, enter San Quentin Penitentiary in the role of the foundation of youth, an institution where the years are made to roll back for men of failing mentality and vitality, and where the spring is restored to the step, wit to the brain, vigor to the muscles, and ambition to the spirit. All this has been done, is being done by a surgeon with a scalpel. Whatever happened to first do no harm? If you get into the research of what was taking place at Fort Detrick, Maryland, and you learn from the various different timelines that we just discussed, from the late 1940s, continuing, most 80% or higher of these experiments were conducted by Nazi scientists that were recruited by the US government, first being discovered in Operation Dustpan, where they tricked the British Army to release these doctors into their custody, and were then given a contract. That contract would have a paperclip on it, and that's how you get the name Operation Paperclip. They'd be brought over here. Most of them would have their names changed, their identities hidden. Some had a military base named after them. Do your research on that one. And we're given full access to the American public. We're given full access to children with mental health issues, patients with mental health issues, and United States prisoners. Our government did that in, I think it was close to 40 plus years of experiments that I've documented so far. So when things like this magical fog happen across this country, it happened in the United Kingdom. It happened here in the US. I'm sure it happened in other places around the world. But the similarity of the harmful effects that have been noted by people on social media from that fog is eerily similar to Operation Sea Spray and other operations. I don't know if we'll ever get down to the truth of it. I think we, the people, have the ability to see many of these now declassified operations. We can add 1 and 1 to equal 2, or if you're a Democrat, 3. And we can see that they've done it before. They did it for a long time, probably while some of you were alive, while some of your parents or grandparents were alive. And it appears that they're continuing to do it again. We know that Bill Gates is a big proponent of some of this. And we know that eventually all these hidden governmental experiments, which I would dare say have nothing to do with Jesus Christ, will eventually catch us all in a catch-22 type of moment. It's not hard for one to see that eventually there is going to be some sort of a mass biological issue, attack, pandemic, whatever we want to call it, Event 201. And here will come the government saying, we've got the cure. But in order for you to take the cure, there's a few things you have to do for us. If you want to come into our federal facilities, or if you want to leave the affected zone and be in the healthy zone, surrender your rights, surrender your guns, free speech, Fourth Amendment, all that good stuff, right? Me and Dave Hodges used to joke about this with the conspiracies about concentration camps here in America. What would that eventually look like? Don't forget, it was Hillary Clinton who said we need fun camps for adults and all of you people should run it, when she was pointing at all of her supporters. We know that in the future, echoing the words of Jesus, the perilous times are coming. All I can do is give you the history of it, and then it's up to you to decide, how do you want to prepare? To me, I think knowledge of this is one of the best ways to prepare, and that's secondary to being right with Christ. But outside of all that, don't expect these things to go away either. We'll open it up to questions over the next couple of minutes. If anyone has a question. I can't believe I could talk that long. Oh, here's this just in. President Trump says he will reinstate any service members who were discharged due to the tyrannical vaccine mandate with full back pay. We'll see. How long did the fog last in your area? The fog lasted here, I want to say, about 2 days, maybe 3. I just remember walking outside one day and I was like, wow, yesterday was super clear. Where did this fog come from? We don't get fog too much up here in the DFW area. If you live in Dallas and Fort Worth, you may get smog. But out here in the cattle country area, west of Fort Worth, we don't really get too much fog. That happens, I would say, more during the summer or the very rainy parts of the year. But yeah, that didn't happen here. So when it happened, I thought it was very odd. I know some people have said that they've shined a light into the fog and they saw rounded vapor floating in the air. Some people have seen gelatinous vapor. Some people have seen different types of chemical substrate that came from this, where it had like an oily, almost purplish residue, like motor oil would be in water. Was the smell like sulfur? Be honest with you, I couldn't tell. My nose ain't worked ever since I came back from Iraq that well, so I couldn't tell. But I remember that there was on the tip of my tongue, kind of like almost a chemically taste. I was outside walking my dog Vader, checking the mail, checking on the chickens and all that, and Yeah, it had a strange taste to it. People in the area have also commented about the smell as well. All right, we have any more questions in the live chat? I'll go up top, see if there were any. Oh, breaking news. Let's see what this is. Every 12 hours is a new emergency. Breaking news, Trump pardons 1,500 January 6 protesters, commutes 6 other sentences. He had to wait 4 years to do that.
Or maybe
So we had someone ask if we could post links to a lot of the research that I did. Yeah, I'll do my best.
or maybe
So we had someone ask if we could amateur.
That's my turn.
I'll do my best. Here's Miss Rucker. Where you at?
Hey guys,
She's alive,
I am alive. Barely, but
though
I'm
she
alive.
don't feel like it. Yeah, I'll do my best to find some of the how to go into the history on the internet and see what all I looked up. There's a couple medical journals. I think there was a few white papers that were about Operation Sea Spray. I'll make sure that I'll find that and I'll insert that into the link for this live video. If you're part of our Patreon page, this write-up that I just did, that doesn't have any links to anything, but this write-up that I did is also on there. So if you're a Patreon member, which by the way, we gotta say thank you to the Patreon members. Dude, you guys are one of the number one reasons why we can still sit here and do this. And then a really big thank you to people who have donated to and prayed for us, help us keep the lights on and keep everything up and running around here. Apologize for being out for like, a week and a half. But we're extraordinarily thankful for all the support and love that you guys give us. We do our best to try and show it in kind. I want to say maybe tonight, there's a sermon that we have made up, but if we don't do it tonight, we will do it tomorrow. I'll have to see how my voice handles all this tonight. But I'm back in the saddle, ready to get back all this. Let me see. Hopefully here in just a few days, that next short story that I'm working on will get posted. Hezekiah's outside. Our youngest is searching for mama. And yeah, I think all you guys will get a huge kick out of that. The episode 2 for the Record Chronicles is on the wayside right now. I'm like 5 pages into it, and I've just realized by the way the story is writing itself that this may be a very long episode 2, but it's going to tie everything in together. So if you haven't listened to the Record Chronicles series, it is free on here on the channel. The people who get the first access to it are the people on Patreon, and then also the channel members. There will eventually be short stories that are only for Patreon and that are also only for the YouTube channel members. That's honestly the only thing that I would say that we charge anything for. It's $4.99 a month to be a YouTube member. You can join Patreon for, I don't know, a couple bucks. But we don't do a lot of these fundraising things for ourselves. We don't do, I don't know. I don't want to point fingers and all that at other channels, but we don't do a lot of that stuff. The affiliates and sponsors that we have are always at the end of our videos. And when we do live streams, we almost never talk about our sponsors or our affiliates, but they are in the description. Soon we're going to be going back out to Tennessee. We're going to be back into our training. We're stepping everything up this year for a much more aggressive approach to training. I think if you have the ability, if you haven't been to any of our training before, you would get a kick out of it. The way that we line up our training, especially the CQB course, is meant for just about anybody. We've had people from the ages of 18 to the ages of 75, men and women, couples, single people, come to this training and always leave wanting more. Our goal is to make sure when you come to our training, no matter what skill level you're on, to leave more confident with your skills. There's a lot of people who, you know, they've never shot a gun before. They've never done any type of training before. We have people who've never been in a fist fight before, and that's completely okay. Just know that we're not a firearms training company. We're a scenario-based training company. So you have to get firearms training if you're going to carry a gun. You need to know your state laws and your local laws. You need to know your federal laws. You need to make sure that if you're going to carry a gun for protection, or if you're going to use one in your home for protection, that you know the things that can get you jammed up if you do them wrong. Some of the things that we do is we give you a little bit of that training at our courses. Apparently, it's an enjoyable thing when Doug puts his old police hat back on, and I talk to you like a cop does after, you know, one of these violent encounters. And all it is to get you ready for the inevitable of what will happen. Me personally, I think you're much more likely to get involved in some sort of a armed conflict by robberies, burglaries, random crazy people. You've always got your lone wolf attackers. Then you've got the threat of the growing gangland violence in America. This stuff's not going away. You need to be ready for it. Any responsible American who's also a gun owner, you need to know how to use that. Sorry, guys, I'm not trying to step on your toes when I say this, but just because you own 20 AR-15s and 10,000 rounds of ammo doesn't mean you know how to use it, unless you've had extensive amount of training. If you have had training before, that's awesome. If it's been a while since you've had training and you need time to come bust the rust off the barrel, as we said in the military, come out to our training. We always have an awesome time in the Lord. It's a great Philadelphia-like experience. It's all about brotherly love. We don't scream. We don't curse at people. This ain't the freaking military. We're here to train people, to make sure that no matter what happens that you experience, that you come out the other side living to tell the tale, hopefully. That's our goal. We try to make it a very realistic-like approach. When you come to our training, we like to use things like this. So this is a training AR-15 developed by Unit Solutions. Unit Solutions is a awesome company. This is probably, I think, one of the greatest things ever created in terms of gun training. And I say that with the utmost sincerity. Our team, Justin, Damus, and I, we know the guys at Unit Solutions pretty well, and they're all good Americans. For the most part, they're all veterans. And this training platform is expensive, but that type of knowledge to learn how to use this to get into a simulated gunfight, and there's not very many people out there doing that training for civilians. If they are, find them, go to them. Don't just stick to our training, go experience anyone else. Get as well-rounded with this as possible. Learn from everybody. depending on where you go, you'll know if that guy's full of crap or not. So we invite you to come out to Vindicta Solutions, come try out our training with us, have a good time in the Lord with us. We always do Bible study and prayer meetings while we're there. We counsel a lot of people while we're there. I've counseled people who are searching for the Lord, people who are brokenhearted. I've counseled couples while I was there. We try to do our best to give advice on what kind of gear people should have, anywhere from the basic pistol, rifle, ammunition, magazines, all the way up to holsters, the plate carriers, the body armor, ballistic helmets, flashlights, night vision, thermal optics, especially if you come while we're out at Ready Made Resources in Tennessee. That's in Tellico Plains, Tennessee. You can even go out to the Ready Made Resources survival store and see what all they have in stock. And that place is dangerous to a man's wallet. If you like the tactical gear stuff and you want to spend anything, be ready, because there's never been a time that I haven't walked into that store with Josh Griswold and went, I only want one thing, and I never leave with just one thing. It's like me walking in and out of Cabela's. I never go there for what I want. I always leave with a bunch of stuff that I don't need, but I want it. So we always have a great time. We've had people who've come to the course 2, 3, 4, 5 times. Love it. We've built such a cool little community of people. It's a great place to network. It's for some people, it's an awesome vacation. Tellico Plains is just, it's beautiful. It's one of the reasons why this household will eventually move there. It is gorgeous out there. But let me see, February, to the end of February to the beginning of March, the beginning of March, we're gonna have the Shoot, Move, Communicate course out there. April, we're going to have the Patrol Survival course. The Patrol Survival course, for those of you who went to the first one, was epic. I mean, I think we had like 4 heat casualties before the whole thing was done with. The whole goal behind that is we wanted to give a squad-based patrolling course. Patrolling means, like 10, 12, 15 guys with their weapons and all their cool guy gear would be patrolling an area after a disaster zone, or after Russia and China eventually invade us, I guess. It's a community building thing. Every man got to be in a leadership position. It's one of those things that we implore people. If you are a church security team and you want to try your team out and you want to grow with them, experience something new, have a different mindset in the terms of training, let everyone have some sort of a leadership position and experience that, this is a great place to do it. Our CQB course is also a great place to do it, but the patrol course is where you test stuff that, most of you guys have been collecting for years and years and years, and you ain't got to do anything with it. Man, that patrol survival course is the place to do it. Anywhere between the type of socks and shoes you wear to the clothing you use, the food that you're cooking, the little pouches of food, your tactical gear, especially your health, your physical well-being, it all gets tested in Appalachia Stand. And I'm not going to say it's brutal, but the environment is brutal. The environment in any type of combat zone or disaster zone, for those of you who have experienced Hurricane Helene, or if you were like me and my wife, you grew up in Hurricane Alley in Southeast Texas and Louisiana, you know that the environment is probably the most dangerous thing you're going to see. From the freaking falling down trees, the floods, the fires, to the criminality that will happen during those times. It is one of the hardest things for people to try and conquer, is the land, as the land's trying to come and get you. So we thrust you into a weekend environment where the scenario is, all right, giant storms hit, power is out, crime is abundant in your community, it's up to you to go out and police your community, because law enforcement isn't coming. They're not there. It is cowboys and Indian time. And that first group that we put that patrol course through, the next month, Hurricane Helene hit that area. And some of the guys who were even in that course had to then go through Hurricane Helene, and some of them even practiced some of the things that we taught them. We go over a lot of radio procedures, how to use radios, how to set up an operations base, a operations plan. And I mean, we stick to very basic infantry style tactics. There's no need to get advanced in any of this. So if that's something that you think is cool, you'd like to go through, you'd like to say that you've been there and experienced it and get the t-shirt and the freaking picture with it, and come out. It's a lot of fun. I will warn everybody, when we first started doing Vindicta Solutions, the pricing was kind of all over the place depending on the course. We have narrowed this price down to $800. So last year it was $600 because the economy is crap, and that was our way to try and help people with getting trained. Now that these equipment that we're using have doubled in price, and we're trying to gain as much more equipment as possible to make your training experience even better. Remember, what we focus on is actually special effects and trying to put you into the scenario, make it as believable as possible. The price for us had to go up. So it's fixed at $800. Almost all of our training is Friday morning to Sunday afternoon. Saturday being the time where we have the most amount of burdensome training that is always going well into the wee hours of the night. And the whole goal here is to get you dirty and tired and miserable, and then throw a curveball at you, because that's how life actually operates. I mean, I don't know. I wish we could fight in fair weather, but that's just not the way it goes. You can't plan for everything to be just copacetic. You need to plan for misery. And you need to be able to get used to it. So for all you men folk out there, if this sounds appealing to you, email us from vindictasolutions.com. You can go straight on there. You can email us. You can sign up from vindictasolutions.com. If you want further information about the training, you can contact us through the website, or you can contact myself through AmericanVindictaShow.com. My wife, I believe, has posted that in the chat. So I think I've covered just about everything. And we'll go ahead and sign off. We've been on here for almost 2 freaking hours. We love you guys. Thank you so much for your prayers. Thank you so much for your support. We try to make this as much of a community thing as possible. And yeah, don't get lackadaisical this year. We already started off with a series of terror attacks, horrific fires. Who knows what else is to come? Stay close to Christ. Keep doing your Bible study. Keep praying with your family. Be that strong shield wall for your neighbors, for your loved ones. Remember the failings of faith. Do not give the enemy one backward step. Go with this might of yours. As God told Gideon, go with this might of yours. And Gideon said, well, Lord, what might? And the Lord said, I'm with you. Go with that might. God is with you. We love you. Thank you so much for watching. Like, share, subscribe, all that stuff. Check out our affiliates in the description below. And we will be finding all the things that piece together the Operation Sea Spray that we went over, and putting that out to you guys so you can continue doing your own research. Love you guys. Stay frosty. We'll see you next time.